Well guys, in March you saw me count down my picks for the absolute worst video game films. Now it's time to look at the opposition, because believe it or not, there have been several films based on video games that have actually been pretty damn good. It's just that the bad ones are so prominent that the good ones usually slip under the radar or simply go unappreciated. So today I'm going to count down my picks for the 10 best video game movies. But first, here are a few honorable mentions. Resident Evil Vendetta. My favorite of the CGI RE films definitely deserves an honorable mention here. I loved seeing Chris and Leon working together. Chris's vendetta against the villain was a good driving force, and I loved seeing Rebecca Chambers back, voiced by the greatest Pink Ranger of all time. Do not even fucking argue with me, Aaron Cahill. Because God knows, I needed that in my life. Sadly, the last act got a little too RE6 for my taste, and the villain's plans for Rebecca were kind of stupid. Ultimately, that's what held it back from making the list overall, but still, it's certainly worth a watch. Super Mario Bros. Oh, I know it's not a good movie. Please don't get that twisted. That being said, much like my next honorable mention, I've always had a blast with this film. Despite the fact that both actors were completely miserable making the movie to the point of constant drinking, the chemistry between John Leguizamo and Bob Hoskins is actually great. While it's nothing like the games, the Dino Hatton sets are creative and fun, which is expected since they literally got the guy from Blade Runner to create it. Also, I can't lie, I watched this all the time as a kid and I always had the biggest crush on Daisy. Samantha Mathis, man. God damn. Damn! So yeah, I acknowledge it's done, but I've always enjoyed it from an entertainment standpoint. This may be a bad movie, but it's a bad movie I love. Speaking of bad movies I love, the next honorable mention is Street Fighter. I mentioned in my last video that I've always had a soft spot for this film, and I mean that. I've always enjoyed this one. It's cheesy, campy, and really doesn't follow the games well, but if you judge it on its own merits as a 90s action film with a lot of cheese starring Jean-Claude Van Damme, it's pretty kick-ass. Ming-Na Wen is entirely sexy and badass as Chun-Li, Ken and Ryu are a lot of fun, and Van Damme is... well, it's Van Damme. You get what it says in the poster, guys. But the best thing about this movie was Raul fucking Julia as M. Bison. This man just owned it. He's evil, he's funny, he's hamming it up, and having the time of his life playing the character. Sadly, he did pass away making the film, but considering he made the film for his kids to enjoy, that's a pretty great way to go out. It may not be a good adaptation of its source material, but judging it just as an action film, it is memorable and very entertaining. And my last honorable mention goes to Rampage. I actually just watched this for the first time on HBO Max a few weeks ago, and I'm not gonna lie, it was a lot more entertaining than I thought it was gonna be. I also gotta say, for a PG-13 movie, this movie had a ton of blood and carnage that I just wasn't expecting it to have. Yeah, it's stupid, but it's surprisingly a lot of fun. And honestly, I would definitely recommend this before any film in the damn Monsterverse. If you want a fun action movie with The Rock, this is definitely one to check out. Alright, honorable mentions have been, well, mentioned. Never mind, this joke is confused. Let's just get to the top 10, shall we? Now, I'll admit, when I first saw this movie, I hadn't played the games from Crystal Dynamics yet. Upon playing them, yeah, the movie does really pale in comparison, which is why it's only at number 10. That being said, once we get past the boring first act, the movie becomes pretty damn kick-ass, and despite not following the story too well, it does a good job at recreating certain moments from the game. The plane on the waterfall, sneaking around the camp, the puzzles, Lara rocking a bow and arrow. When it does things from the game right, it excels greatly. Granted, there are way too many moments where Lara should have been dead and ended up surviving, but to the film's credit, when Lara gets hurt, the film doesn't shy away from showing every gash, every cut, and every wound. When Lara gets hurt, the movie makes it clear that she's truly fucked up. Also, I have to say, this is one of the more well-acted films in this list. Alicia Vikander is a great Lara Croft, and she is giving a performance better than any video game film rightfully deserves. I especially love the scenes with her and her father, played by Dominic West. The scene of her finding him in the cave is especially touching. The action, when it finally kicks in, is wonderful. The whole climax of the film just fucking rocks. So yeah, there's definitely things that don't work about this one, but the things that do work are hard to ignore. Hopefully the in-the-works sequel can double down on what worked about this film and lessen the things that didn't. Oh yeah, this is definitely one I'm gonna get a ton of shit for. Fans of Tekken really hate this film, and I get that to an extent. If you're invested in the story from the games and this movie didn't do it for you, I get you. Trust me, I get you. I was the same way with the Paul Anderson Resident Evil films, so I understand your pain. If you hate this movie for that reason, no judgment here. Here's my perspective. I don't like the story from the games. It's fucking stupid. How many fucking times can you throw a tournament just to lure someone out of hiding? How many times can you milk that devil gene, sins of the father bullshit? When it comes to Heihachi, Kazuya, and Jin, they're bad, they're good, they're bad, they're good, they're bad, they're good. Jesus Christ, fucking pick one and go with it. God damn. Whew. Well, I'm glad I finally got all that off my chest. So now that I have probably pissed off every Tekken fan in the known universe, let me continue to piss you off by explaining why I like this movie. This movie wisely dispensed of all that supernatural devil gene crap and decided to focus on kick-ass action and martial arts instead. I know, shameful, right? The characters are memorable and fun. Jin, played by John Fu, is a compelling protagonist with solid motivations. Kazuya, played by Ian Anthony Dale, is a fun villain that I love to hate. Heihachi is played by Shang Tsung, and no, I shouldn't even have to explain how fucking awesome that is. The fight scenes are riveting and the pacing is near perfect. There's good acting, good drama, good action. What's really not to like about this one? Yeah, it may not follow the games, but as an action revenge film, it's pretty damn good. Watching it again, it was even better than I remembered it. Again, if you didn't like it because you have more love for the games, that's perfectly okay. I've been there myself. As for me, I'm not a fan of the games, and I thought this movie was entirely badass.
Anger doesn't fuel the fighter's soul, it incinerates it. You're fighting for all of us.
Speaking of movies that are hated by fans, at number 8 is Final Fantasy: The Spirits Within. Whereas I can understand the hatred fans have for Tekken, Super Mario Bros., and even Street Fighter for not following the games, this is one I really never understood the hatred for. Every mainline Final Fantasy game is its own story, so it stands to reason that a Final Fantasy movie would tell its own story as well. And if they had tried to adapt, say, Final Fantasy VI or Final Fantasy VII even, fans would have bitched more because you can't fit an entire RPG story into a single fucking movie. So coming up with something new and original for a film was the best move for the director, who, for the record, was the guy who literally created Final Fantasy. So yeah, I don't get the backlash for this one. Yeah, it bombed, but let's be honest, the marketing for the film was also kinda shit. Yeah, let's not promote the film's plot or the actors involved, let's promote how hot Aki's character model is. It was really pitiful and it's a shame. The film does a great job blending elements of both science fiction and fantasy, much like the series was doing at the time with 7, 8, and 9 respectively. The action is great, the story is interesting, the voice work is well done, and the visuals are just gorgeous. This is a beautiful looking movie. Ming-Na Wen, Alec Baldwin, Donald Sutherland, Steve Buscemi, and James Woods all do fine work. While it may not be what you think of when you think Final Fantasy overall, Final Fantasy: The Spirits Within is an awesome CG animated movie that deserves more respect.
It is not a fairy tale.
Detective Pikachu was not really something I was ever expecting to be great. But I'll be damned if I didn't leave the theater with a smile from ear to ear. This movie perfectly captured the world of Pokemon, while giving us fun characters and a fun story to boot. I'll admit the mystery in the film regarding what happened to the main character's dad was pretty easy to figure out, and I'll also admit the villain was a tad too damn obvious. But the way it captured this world that I grew up with was just amazing. I was floored by it as a fan of Pokemon. Ryan Reynolds is hilarious as the voice of Pikachu and has great chemistry with Justice Smith. The CG for all the Pokemon was top notch. I almost cried when I saw Bulbasaur on screen for the first time. Best starter Pokemon, don't even fucking argue with me. The humor is great, the action is great, the journey it takes you on is a ton of fun. Detective Pikachu is just a blast.
That's a twist. That's very twisty.
This was a movie that I was positive would absolutely suck. After that first trailer, I had no hope for this film. Hell, even after the internet bitched and they changed the Sonic design, I was still very skeptical. But I walked out of that theater so happy and so damn shocked at how good it was. The movie brilliantly adapted the characters of Sonic and Dr. Robotnik respectively, and delivered a surprisingly heartfelt story. Even the bits with the human characters were surprisingly funny, which shocked the hell out of me because most movies with this kind of premise tend to blow. Smurfs, Alvin and the Chipmunks, Tom and Jerry, Hop, which, funny enough, also starred James Marsters. Sonic the Hedgehog proved that this kind of plotline can work if the people involved put in the effort. And make no mistake, the effort shows throughout the entire film. They could have just made it generic and unmemorable like Smurfs, but the people involved showed that they did care about the property. They cared about Sonic. They cared about getting Robotnik right. Ben Schwartz and Jim Carrey are wonderful in their roles. Schwartz brings a lovable charm to Sonic that the character needs, and his chemistry with James Marsters is spot on. Carrey is as over the top as ever and is loving every minute playing Robotnik. He's so enjoyable, he gives Raul Julia Zem Bison a run for his money. So yeah, not much else to say. Between the good acting, the humor, the heartfelt story, and the fun visuals, Sonic the Hedgehog is pretty damn great.
Let's go!
You know, for all the shit people give this one, I'll honestly never understand it. Welcome to Raccoon City perfectly adapted the tone of the games, giving me the survival horror experience I always wanted in a Resident Evil movie. While it adapts the first two games in the series, it surprisingly does a fine job at giving both stories equal screen time. It focuses on Claire and Leon's troubles in the RPD and the Raccoon City orphanage every bit as much as it focuses on the STARS team in the Spencer Mansion. Yeah, there are changes, but the changes are justifiable from an adaptation standpoint. The tension looms throughout the film, the atmosphere is on point, and the nods to John Carpenter movies throughout the film were very welcoming, and fit the aesthetic perfectly. It doesn't get every character 100%, but it does make even the ones they changed enjoyable. This is due mostly to the cast, which was pitch perfect in my opinion. I'll admit the third act is a bit rushed, and I would have liked to see more of William Birkin in the movie, but that's small potatoes compared to everything else the film does right. Whereas Paul Anderson claimed to be a Resident Evil fan, Johannes Roberts proved he was a Resident Evil fan. So you can go ahead and hate it, but as for me, this Resident Evil fan was more than pleased. I love this film for pretty much the same reason I love Welcome to Raccoon City, in the sense that the director clearly cared about the property and wanted to represent it as best he could in the film medium. The reason this one has a leg up over Welcome to Raccoon City is for the simple fact that it is a scarier film. It's just as atmospheric, but it does have more scares and more unsettling moments in my opinion. That scene of Pyramid Head ripping Anna's skin off is just insane, and the finale with all the barbed wire is one of the most chilling endings I've seen in any film. Now, I'll admit, I'm not a big Silent Hill player, but from what I know about the story, when this film got it right, it got it right. Rhoda Mitchell and Jodelle Fairland do great work in the film. Sean Bean and Kim Coates are fine, but unfortunately their subplot feels very tacked on. And if you know anything about the making of the film, that's because it was. It was added at the last minute because of studio notes which read, "There's not enough men in this movie." And sadly, that's what really drags it down. While the story does get a little confusing towards the end, it's not enough to ruin the experience of the film. Silent Hill has great atmosphere, terrifying creatures, and does the game it's based on proud. This is one I actually didn't know about until a few weeks ago. I've never played the game it's based on, nor had I heard about it until doing research for this list. So, in the interest of this list, I watched it, and my god. If you have the means to see this movie, watch it. Not only is it a great mystery film, not only does it have fun characters, not only is the humor on point throughout, this is one of the coolest werewolf films I have ever seen. And the ironic thing is, you hardly ever see a werewolf in this movie. It's basically a whodunit where one person in the town is secretly a werewolf, and we have to decipher who it is. And what makes it better is that I never saw the identity of the werewolf coming. The film does a great job at concealing the werewolf's identity and keeping you guessing throughout the runtime. It reminds me of an old role-playing game called Saboteur that I used to play with my friends. Basically, you're given clues as to who the Saboteur is, and you have to figure out who it is before said Saboteur kills you. It was like a movie version of that, and it was great. This is a video game movie that has been under the radar, and we need to turn this shit around. Please seek out Werewolves Within. You will not be disappointed.
Are we really in a Mexican standoff right now?
Baby, don't say Mexican. Just stand up.
For numbers 1 and 2, I have been flip-flopping back and forth for days. Like, it's really hard to decide which one I like more and which one I feel is better. I honestly love both of them equally. I think both films capture the spirit and story of their counterparts in ways I have not seen in any other video game-based films. God damn, this is difficult, but, you know, fuck it, only one can win out here, so here's where I landed. Sonic the Hedgehog was a really good movie, much to my surprise at the time. But Sonic the Hedgehog 2 is simply phenomenal and easily one of the best film sequels ever made. When it comes to films based on video games, this was the cream of the crop. It respected the lore, it respected the characters, it doubled down on everything that made the first movie great. It had heart, it had the charm, and it knew how to utilize every character properly. Idris Elba is so good as Knuckles that it's hard for me to imagine any other voice coming out of his mouth. The character is a perfect foil for Sonic, and both he and Ben Schwartz sell every frame they have together. Now, the first film was about finding your place in the world. This film has the same theme, but builds upon it, with Sonic wanting to be a hero, but learning a lesson in understanding how to go about it. It actually gives him and Knuckles a perfect parallel, with Knuckles simply wanting to fulfill what he believes is his destiny to restore the Master Emerald to his people. For a kid's film, there's a lot of emotional moments that hit hard. My favorite scene in the entire movie isn't even an action scene. It's a scene where Sonic and Knuckles are talking on a beach with Sonic trying to lend Knuckles some words of wisdom. It's actually quite a touching moment that I wasn't expecting. I swear to God, Tails is cuter than a box of kittens. I adored this character. I loved how they made him a fanboy for Sonic and developed their relationship. And I'm sorry, but seeing them on that iconic red plane, that just gave me chills as a fan. In addition, the film also builds on the relationship between Sonic and Tom, with Sonic learning to see Tom as a father figure rather than just a friend he was in the first film. And Jim Carrey as Robotnik? What else is there to say? He is wild, he is funny, he is as over-the-top and likable as he's ever been. If he does retire like he's been talking about, this is a perfect note for him to end his career on. Between the character moments, the action, the visuals, the faithful way it adapts to games, I am absolutely floored at how much love for the property was presented in this film. Sonic the Hedgehog 2 is one of the best video game films I have ever seen, and one of the best films I've seen all year. As for number 1, oh come on, like you even have to ask. Now, like I said, I loved Sonic 2 so much that it was really hard to choose between that and this, but after seeing both films back to back, Mortal Kombat just has a slight edge. Literally the only problem I can see with Sonic 2 was the wedding subplot, which could have easily been cut down for time or taken out. Now, unlike most people, I liked the wedding subplot in that film and found it pretty funny, but I do agree it's not really important to anything. The fact is, there isn't a single thing in Mortal Kombat that isn't important to its story. Everything in the film is in service of its plot, and not a single thing derails from it. That's how I ultimately decided what would be at number 2 and what would be at number 1. And Mortal Kombat still takes the spot as the single best video game adaptation ever made. It gets the story right, it gets the characters right, every fight is memorable, the character development for Liu Kang, Johnny Cage, and Sonya Blade is perfect, and even the sets are kick-ass to this day. People like to bitch that it's not a good adaptation because there's no gore, and while I agree that the gore and fatalities were a big draw for Mortal Kombat, I must respectfully disagree for 2 reasons. For one, gore does not make a movie better, no matter what movie it is. The remake of Mortal Kombat was overloaded with gore, and the film was terrible. Secondly, not having one element from the game does not make it a bad adaptation. If that were the case, fans would despise the Harry Potter movies for all the shit they left out from the books. I'm sorry, that is a stupid thing to hate a movie for. Not only did the film do a fantastic job adapting the story, it did an even better job adding to its legacy. This film's iterations of Kano and Shang Tsung were so damn iconic that they became the definitive versions of those characters. Future games would model those 2 characters after the versions from this movie, and even Cary Tagawa would come back to play Shang Tsung in the web series Mortal Kombat Legacy. And it's not hard to see why. He is so damn good as the character, and honestly, he's probably one of the best movie villains I've ever seen. He oozes with so much charisma and menace that it's impossible not to love him. Another thing I want to touch upon is the notion that the film has no real character development. I'm sorry, but if you think that, you are wrong. I can't even think of another way to say it. you're just wrong. The main characters we meet at the beginning of the film are completely different by the end of the film, and it's the journey they go on that gives them that transformation. Liu Kang learns to embrace his destiny instead of fighting against it. Sonya learns to be more trusting of those who only want to help her, and Johnny Cage learns to fight for something other than his own ego. Each character has a flaw to overcome, and each character overcomes that flaw by the end of the film. So when you say there's no character development, maybe, I don't know, actually watch the movie next time. Robin Chow and Bridget Wilson are both great as Liu Kang and Sonya Blade respectively. Both are entirely awesome. However, I'm not gonna lie, it's Lyndon Ashby's Johnny Cage that steals the show for me. He has the charisma and the charm that makes Johnny Cage such a cool character. I loved his fights with Goro and Scorpion, and I really loved his back and forth with the rest of the cast, as he manages to get some of the best lines in the movie. As for Christopher Lambert as Raiden, you know what, I don't give a fuck if he's not Asian, he's fucking awesome. And I love how they made him the guide for the other main characters on their journey. If you're really bitching because he's not Asian, I would like to remind you that Raiden is a fucking god! He can literally be whatever damn race he wants! Who gives a shit if he's Asian or not? He's awesome in the role, and that's all that should matter. Honestly, it's like that argument I keep hearing that Goku should only be played by an Asian. Why? He's a fucking alien! What, was Planet Vegeta a strictly Asian planet in your minds? Such a stupid fucking argument. So yeah, Mortal Kombat is still the king of video game-based films, and I find it rather ironic that the film I consider the worst video game adaptation and the film I see as the best video game adaptation had the same director. Yes, Paul Anderson directed this film, with it being his first big Hollywood movie. And it is without a doubt one of his best movies, topped only by Event Horizon. Honestly, it shows that he clearly has a lot of talent, and I wish he would make more films with this amount of quality. Again, I love every film in this list, but when it comes to films based on video games, Mortal Kombat delivers a flawless victory. So what are your favorite video game adaptations? Please let me know in the comments, and please subscribe if you'd like to see more.
You can't run from me, Shang! I don't need to run.